Damon Benning to preview the Wisconsin game coming up. Before we do that, we'll take a brief look back at the loss against USC and what we've heard this week in the media, as we heard from Dana Holgorsen for the first time yesterday. Damon, I do want to get to Holgorsen's comments, but before we get there, because I know everyone is clinging on to the blocking comments he made yesterday, this is reminding me of the text I sent you during the game, because no more than 10 seconds later, you said it on the radio, and I said, Holgorsen calls screens too wild. Perimeter blocking just seems to be better. No more than 10 seconds later, you said, oh, look, the play that everyone's up in arms about. Concerning, maybe, that it took a new coach to come in and have attention to detail? Or what flares did you see from just 1 week of Dana Holgorsen being in the building? Because the playbook was not rewritten. It just was little things were executed better.
Yeah, so I think the most immediate impact was accountability. All right, people will fast forward to the fresh set of eyes and the ability to be objective, but I think when somebody comes in and they have their own standards of what they feel like their baseline is with no preconceived notions, that was the biggest win for Nebraska. Right. And then you couple that with the fresh set of eyes, and it's just a different approach. And so I think not rewarding lack of production is key in any entity. I don't care if it's business, your household, sports. When you're not staying current with fresh benchmarks in terms of what's necessary, sometimes you practice things the wrong way. You say, oh, I practice it all the time. And it's like, well, if you take a step back and it's like, ooh, I probably could have done this, this, and this. It feels right. But you have to ask yourself, does it look right or is it transitioning right? So I like the shot in the arm. I like the fresh vantage point. I do think it's easier for somebody that doesn't have any skin in the game to come and be hypercritical, because at that particular juncture, if you're too close to it, you've heard the whole Forest reference, right? Then I like the fact, and I think the timing was perfect. I've likened this whole thing to Coach Rule's alter ego. You know, Coach Holgorsen is able to say some things that Coach Rule intimates but doesn't say, because you don't really want your CEO or head coach saying those things. So I kind of like the balance.
Yeah. Was there anything else that stood out about what he said yesterday?
So there's lots. I mean, I could start with you know the praising of the offensive line. I think was critical, because with the offensive line more than any other position, we don't know what we're watching, but we make all these sweeping judgments. Oh, these guys can't block, or they don't do this, and it's like I'm not sure that we're actually crystal clear at what we're watching, because that's not the impression I get. And, well, you know, PFF said, and I'm thinking that's not the end-all, be-all, right? Like sometimes in the ultimate team game, you have to get by with a little help from your friends, and so it was refreshing to hear him talk about getting to the second level. I talked about guys like Lutovsky a couple of times during the broadcast real time about coming off to the second level and being good at the point of attack, and Nebraska's run game steadily getting better throughout the course of the game. All those things, I think he kind of validated in the press conference, and then he drops kind of the hammer, right? Yeah. Where, if I stop the frame and the hole's this big and there's no running back in it, and some of these plays that SC made, these guys are good tackles, but we got to come out of the back. Like, I like those kinds of things, because that's what I would want as a player, and I would want somebody to let me know, hey, if you do this, it can yield the kind of results you want. Let's get better here. And if you've been coached for a long time, which you have, you're used to people telling you the next step in order to achieve the next goal. So you don't mind the criticism along the way. Now, the difference is, for these guys, which may be a little harsh, is they don't know that he's invested in them yet. So sometimes you don't receive the criticism as well. But at this particular juncture, we don't really have time for hurt feelings, because the culture is what it is. Yeah. Sometimes you just need to be told the truth. You hope that they're not mutually exclusive, but in this case, if they are, you got to line up and play ball or find something else different to do. Yeah. I heard you mention earlier that people were upset that he didn't know names. He was talking about numbers. Yeah, it's just weird that we globbed onto that. Yeah. Well, I think it was more telling that he said our offense or we
I think that was more telling.
Yeah,
because he's not saying
because your glass stays half full and you've been coached before.
Well, yeah, because I think for a coach to come in a weekend, I'm not expecting him to know all these names, but for the fact that he's able to include himself in that group, I thought that was more telling. He could have said the offense, them, they. I think the our and we was more telling.
100%, and it's not like it's just how coaches talk.
Yeah.
Right. I don't like. I could do names in the scouting report. We don't. We do numbers because it's easy. Numbers are universal.
If I'm watching the scouting, I'm going to see
it. Right. 17, 18, 42, 44. That's okay.
Yeah.
Well, he said, the running backs coach. Listen, this is the first time that he's addressed the Nebraska media. He knows what's coming down the pipe in terms of, hey, when did you know, sequential this, that. And he's just a football coach. If nothing else he showed you during that press conference, he just wants to coach ball.
Yeah.
And I think Nebraska needs that. They need somebody with no ties, no emotional connections, no wanting to please. That's why the first thing I said, Ave, of what I liked about Coach Holgorsen coming on board, he's used to coaching in chaos.
You did, yeah.
It's my number one. He had the whole Cam Ward issue and redshirting, and there was Houston, and the whole Bill Stewart thing at West Virginia was awkward, and you go from a coach in waiting to this isn't going to work, and now he's thrust into it, and West Virginia has a rabid fan base of their own. He's just used to dealing with things when they aren't easy, and he's had to find a way to flourish. So it was one step short of my always my dream wish list was whichever coach takes over the helm at Nebraska, I don't want this to be his best job. Because there's some things that come with this job that can kind of spoil you a little bit. So I like that Coach Holgorsen comes with that kind of background.
With some bumps and bruises.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to talk about...
It's a bumps and bruises.
Yeah.
Like, we see it now, right? It's so twofold. The best this and the most coverage that, and we're supportive this. That has a downside, too, because of the microscope. So you want to be a little bruised and have some bumps because it's okay.
Yeah.
You felt this before. It's not the first time, and you're like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm good with that.
Yeah, he cares about this. Nothing here.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about some of the positives that maybe we did see on offense. And I think there was an intention in the running game. We talked about, I'll get back to your comment because I want to ask you about that as this is your area of expertise. But Dante and Emmett had over 50 yards, which I know aren't astronomical numbers, but they seem to be tougher runs. There seem to be some more design for them. For you, when you hear Coach Holgorsen say, if there's a gap this big, as he said, and the back's not in it, where do you, as a former running back, say, okay, I got to look at this. What are they missing? What are the running backs missing? Are they not trusting the guys up front? Are they not trusting themselves? How do they adjust to that?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's probably more the latter of trusting themselves, right? I was always taught, I heard it over and over again, trust the integrity of the play. Stay on your path until something gets you off it. Press the point of attack. All these things, right? Excuse me. But when you're pressing and you're situational, so there's two things at play here. Number one, you're always kind of worry about, well, how many plays am I going to get? Do I need to maximize? Is there pressure to maximize so I don't get pulled out of the game? So sometimes I can resort to playing hero ball.
Yeah.
Right? Then the other thing is because I share time and there are multiple guys getting looks, am I getting in enough of a rhythm? Have I seen enough of different defenses and fronts with these plays where I can get comfortable kind of running these plays? So it's a twofold thing, but what the backs have to do is just take the constructive criticism, ask yourself, is there any truth to it? And then it's my favorite question that you have to ask, and I don't care if you're a coach or a coordinator or even a fan, right? How can I be better? What can I do differently to change the outcome to what I want?
Yeah.
I just think that's critical because it's just accountability, and I think that's where these backs are at.
I want to pick your brain now for a second. So when you're working on vision as a running back, what was something you guys would do to, because I mean, you have the physical part down, but vision is the other half of it. And that's something you really have to work on by just repetition.
That's funny. We talked about this on the show with Ravi a couple weeks ago. If you're not a naturally gifted running back, and not all of us were, right? Mm-hmm. Some are more instinctual than others. The one way that you can offset that is with repetitions. Same running plays against multiple fronts. So I know if I'm running the ball against an under front, and I've got a 1 technique and a 3 technique here, and they're going to block backside. Hey, my cutback may be right behind the center. I'm going to read the Mike. If Mike plays over, I'm going to cut it back. They're little. That's a lot. That's mumbo jumbo football talk for how this play happens. Yeah. Then they'll say, okay, hey, listen, we may run this against an even front, and you may be playing with 2 eyes, or guys over the guards. Mm-hmm. And, okay, so the double is going to occur between the tackle and the guard now. The center's going to block back. So because he's blocking back, I'm not going to probably cut that thing back that skinny. I'm going to wait for this double, press it, and then my cutback may just be like a little skinny S. It may not be all the way back. So the more you do that against multiple fronts, the more you know how they're going to play it. And it won't catch you as off guard sometimes. You know, sometimes you see Nebraska's backs running and they're like, oh, this defender kind of came out of nowhere. Yeah. That's repetition.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then the other side of this is I think we've already seen the example of incorporating different players into the offense. We saw Bonner be a huge, huge impact player for them, even just in short moments, right? How does that open up more avenues come this weekend?
Well, I think so. Other guys now are going to be motivated. They're like, okay, what are the attributes that JB is showing that's allowed him to have opportunity? Well, he doesn't complain. He's super loyal, and he stays in the moment, right? He's a guy that is always ready. One of the things that I love about Bonner, I like to say I'd rather be caught with than without. He would tell you he'd rather stay ready than have to get ready. Yep. And it's hard to be that person, right? Just think about in our own lives, to be on when called upon, and you never know when that's going to be. It's tough.
It is tough.
Right?
Yeah.
So other guys see that, right? You can go to a Jalen Lloyd and say, if Jalen Lloyd was in a situation and he felt like, man, I'm just not getting enough opportunities, man. And, you know, he and JB are like, hey, just stay ready. Just stay ready. We compete. And then on that last drive, you can come up with a big catch to put yourself in position. Those are the guys that you got to rally around. The Emmett Johnsons, there's this whole old guy, new guy thing. Well, Emmett's been around a while.
Yeah.
But he still has the characteristics you want. He's ultra competitive, and he'd rather stay ready than get ready. Those are the kinds of guys that I think you'll see evolve, and the type of people that Nebraska will continue to try to bring in the program that are hyper competitive. Start with competitive stamina. You can teach the rest. It's hard to teach competitiveness. You either are or you aren't.
Yeah. Well, I want to flip our attention to the defensive side of the ball. There was areas that looked back to normal at times. We heard the breakdown was the veteran secondary, which even Coach Rule said they'll be the first to tell you. Yeah. And it sounds like the root of the issue has been addressed and understood. It was the coverages, the communication. We heard it from Rule, the players, and Coach White. Another situation of you maybe taking us to the film room here. How do those big plays develop when you have secondary trying to play a cover 4 and a cover 3? What does that look like?
So, you know, it happened a couple of times. So on the first drive, where Maava kind of scrambles, he heaves the ball down the sidelines. They're in cover 3, right? It's a 3 deep. It's right there in the number. Corner has 1/3, safety has hash to hash, backside corner has another third. You have your guys doing their thing underneath. At no point in that defense should anybody be behind you. The basic premise is you have your third, stay as deep as the deepest man until something gets you off your track. Well, when they throw a ball over your head and it's along the sideline, that is no easier than your third. It is sideline to hash. That throw is on the sidelines and you're not as deep as your deepest man. It's just being selfish because you don't have your eyes in the backfield and you're not playing your defense.
Is that why we saw Gifford run over to Malcolm immediately?
Yeah.
And there was
that was Singleton on the first one.
I guess you're right. Yeah, I guess it was the second half one.
Or Tommy Hill. It was Tommy Hill on the first one.
Yeah.
And then he comes back with the play where he doesn't push Branch out of bounds, right? Back-to-back plays, and I'm thinking, oh, come on, T. Hill. Like, you don't need to don't play hero ball now, right?
Yes, the missed tackle.
Just know what's my 1 of 11. The other thing you want to get to Coach Rule talked about, hey, listen, if I'm a cover 2 safety, play cover 2. Well, in cover 2, corners squat in the flats, safeties are over the top. So even though Deuce, literally, the number and his name, came from across the formation on that over route, the 2-high safety needs to stay in a 2-high shell. It is almost inexplicable to have a guy bend across the field in 2, because 2 is meant for not letting guys behind you at the safety spot.
So that was the one that Giff ran over there.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they see run action.
Yeah.
And it was a great play design from SC in terms of you got the little short motion from 87. They're in a little tight 2x2 set. You fake the inside run to Marks, and you're thinking, gosh, they've crushed us on this play. I'm thinking Puller. Deuce doesn't run a route. He just gets to safety and he blocks him. No, Deuce just kept on running.
Yeah.
That's just simply not reading your keys, right? 2 disappeared. 1 didn't go vertical. Keep giving ground. Like, if something goes away, something's coming.
Yeah.
Just trying to play hero ball. Just do your 1 of 11.
Yeah. Well, before we kind of wrap up this conversation, I wanted to talk to you about this a little bit, because after the game, people were rather angry with me because I said the post-game press conference didn't feel as doom and gloom as usual. Heard Coach Rule say that he was pleased with some things, obviously was disappointed that they did get more production. We heard that same exact message relayed this week. Heard Dylan even say, I'm excited for the jump we're going to make with week 1 to week 2 with Holgorsen. This week, we hear Coach Rule come in and say, I'm energized. We hear Dylan say, there's a sense of energy or urgency. I'm excited. These just don't feel like the words you would hear from a team that have lost 4 in a row, chasing that bowl game at a dead end. That's kind of what I was trying to relay. Is there's been post-game press conference where it's like, oh, the sky is falling. We'll have to look at this. We don't know where to go from here. Even if that's not the actual words they're saying, that's kind of what it's felt like. And I left that being like, okay, yes, the score shows what it did. It's another loss. Everyone's hungry for that bowl game, but there seems to be some glimmers of hope, and we've heard it this week. I mean, Dylan's saying he's excited. He's excited for what to like that. Coming off of 4 straight losses, I don't know how you took all that, but it didn't feel as devastating as I thought it was going to feel.
So it depends on your temperament, and I like this because I always give the analogy. If something doesn't happen that I don't like and it's my fault, I prefer that. Right? I want to be the one that can control the outcome.
Right.
99.9% of the time. Some people don't like that burden, and I get it. Some people just rather be able to say, well, they're better than me. There's nothing I could do about it. It just depends on your temperament. The reason I think people are optimistic that played on that, or that were in that locker room, were for 2 reasons. Number 1, most of what happened was self-inflicted.
Right.
So while there's this tendency to want to be doom and gloom, players they're taught, hey, it's correctable. You want to correct the correctables. I know how to play 3 deep. I know how to play 2. I probably should have caught that ball. I probably shouldn't have thrown that ball. Like those things, you're encouraged, because if you're competitive, you want another crack at it.
Totally.
I'd rather have that than just be like,
we don't know.
This guy is just way better than me. There was nothing I could have done. I did the best that I could do. Then you sleep a little easier because it's like, oh, man, not about me. It's about them. For me, that's a miserable feeling. I want the onus to know that I messed up. That's why I think they're encouraged, because there was some ownership in, I've got to catch that ball.
Yeah.
I can't fall asleep there. Offensively is reason number 2. Nobody knew what to expect on Saturday. Dana didn't know. Dylan didn't know. We didn't know. Nobody knew. And it was actually probably better.
Yeah, so relatively it was better than
they thought.
Yes.
So they're like, I didn't even know if we were going to be able to, how we were going to communicate in conflict. That wasn't too bad. The mechanics, oh my gosh, they were better than I thought.
Operation?
We can get, That was key. That was key that he said going into this week, right?
I agree.
The operation was great. The mechanics were great, because that's usually the hard part.
And the communication wasn't an issue.
That's why I think they're encouraged.
Yeah.
Because they handled the hard part. They can always get better at the fine tuning, because you haven't been around each other long enough. Those are the two reasons I think you heard optimism.
Yeah, and I don't want to skip by. Yes, there was still disappointment. Our fans,
nobody's happy about it.
No one was happy. I was not expecting to leave that little tent of a press conference and think, whoa. I thought it was going to be, we were all the way in LA. We got a home game essentially, and this is how it is. But anyway, I'll let that go to rest. I just was curious how you felt about that. But getting into Wisconsin, they have their own question marks. As we know, this week they let go of their OC and Coach Longo. DB, you've talked about the Wisconsin press conference a lot this week. Mm-hmm. For those who haven't listened to it, won't go watch it, could you sense the temperature inside that program by listening to that press conference?
It's hot.
Yeah.
Right. It's about 212. You go from 212. 212 is when you hit boiling, right? Like before that, it's just steam. This is boiling, and I felt like I kept waiting for the Nebraska questions.
Yeah.
Especially given they've won 12 in a row against Nebraska or whatever the abysmal number is, and it can get you to a bowl. And I listened to the first answer, and then his follow-up, he himself, Coach Fickle, and I was like, ooh, this is not going to go well. Mm. And I think even the media had to kind of change gears because of his responses. Yeah. And so it's definitely, I think, stressful there. And that's outside of Pauling and who knows if Wohlers is going to play for them at the safety spot. So, and we remember Pauling. He single-handedly killed Nebraska last year, especially on third down. So they probably had bigger fish to fry, but given the fact that the first couple of answers to that press conference went the way that it did, it totally took another direction. Mm-hmm. And now that's all anybody can talk about. Mm-hmm. And, oh, by the way, you got a game to play. Yeah,
when you go to their website, it's actually interesting when you have, like, the links of, press conferences or articles. It says viral video and then the press conference. Yeah. So if that tells you anything. But, anywho, so we did hear Coach White yesterday talk about how there'll be a lot of in-game adjustments because they don't even really know who's going to be calling the plays. If you're Tony White, how do you prepare for this game?
So you have your base rules. That's a great question. You listen, in 2x2s, we want to play it this way. In a 3x1, we want to play it this way. And then you look at personnel groupings. They have and when they have this personnel and they line up like this is what they have a tendency to do. So you teach concepts. That's all you can do until you know the specifics. You try to be sound in the concepts. Then as the game wears on, you can go from the macro to the micro, where it's like, okay, this is how they're hitting us with this scheme. This is how we want to play it. You won't really know that until you see what they actually want to do. So I think for him, the good thing is you're back to basics and fundamentals. Hey, in 2x2s, when this guy presses vertical, this is what we want to do. You get this look on the exchange routes. This is what we want to do. And this personnel grouping, this is what we want to do. That's fine, because concepts are easier, in my opinion, than specifics. Specifics are when you really make your money. Those are real-time in-game adjustments after everybody gets done having their marker and dry erase board.
Are there any areas on the Wisconsin defense where you think Nebraska can make them vulnerable?
Yeah, so I think for Nebraska, you have to win outside the numbers, right? Wisconsin's gonna show them their fair share of man-to-man. We'll see what happens at the safety spot with Wohlers if he does play. He's an all-conference caliber player. And he leads them in tackles, and he's a good player. So you have to see if he's in the game. But I think they can make some plays outside the numbers. But it's a good defense, right? And Wisconsin is a very good defense. They're sound. They typically don't let you throw the ball over their head, and they have been okay against the run. We saw them against Oregon, and Oregon struggled in that one. So I think Nebraska's going to have to try to continue to evolve in the ground game, which is what they showed flashes of as that SC game went on in Los Angeles. Defensively, when Wisconsin has the ball, I think Locke's a guy that can extend plays at the quarterback spot. Yep. So you have to make sure when you have a chance to get him to the ground, get him down to the ground. And, Walker and Dupree, these young backs that they have, those guys are good. So you want to limit Wisconsin's chances on the ground, but you got to kill the head of the snake. You got to get Locke to the ground if he wants to scramble around and try to make plays.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to the keys here in a second. It's senior day on Saturday. You've been there before. How do you manage the emotions of going into Memorial for the last time?
Yeah, it sounds easier now than it was then, but I caught a break. So I was a captain, so my timing was off, right? I didn't have to wait that long. We got to go out first. So full disclosure, I got a reprieve, right? I didn't have to absorb the emotions in the tunnel and wait.
Yeah.
The other thing was I knew we had bigger fish to fry with the Big 12 championship game.
Yep.
So I didn't allow myself, because I'm not sentimental to begin with. Surprise.
Right.
But if I were these guys, and I think I know what they're feeling, because you talk to the guys enough, they've been through a ton.
Yep.
And this is the last time that they're going to do this at Memorial Stadium, and you're not guaranteed anything else but Iowa, right? So you have to say to yourself, the whole key to this is I'm going to give myself X amount of time, whether it's seconds
or a few
minutes. Yeah. But not much more than that.
Yep.
And then you've got to compartmentalize to go back and do a job. But it is it's emotional.
Yeah.
And the most important thing is to stay in the moment. That means embracing it and then moving on from it. So as you go second to second, manage that. That's the easiest.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, after having your own senior day, I go to any senior day now and I can't handle it.
Yeah, it's tough.
Can't do it.
It's tough.
I really can't.
And I've been through it.
Yeah, they have. So, okay, well, there's that. There's a lot of emotion to handle and manage, especially. And we didn't even really talk much about Wisconsin because this feels like another week where it's simply about Nebraska.
It is about Nebraska.
How do you break down the three things that Nebraska has to do this weekend?
So I think they're all Nebraska related. Number one, I think you got to stop the run for Wisconsin. Number two is remember that it's a total team game. You're just one of 11 on one play at a time. Not every play is going to be a referendum on the outcome. And you can't look at it that way. I always say it. I'm going to say it again. This team struggles with it. Stay right here.
Yep.
Next play, restart the clock. Next play, restart the clock. That's how they have to approach this. So the team that can stay in the moment will have the advantage. You hope it's Nebraska at home. Yeah. And then number three is you want to continue with the improvements in the kicking game. You know, you haven't missed a field goal since, I believe, Purdue. Your coverage has been pretty good. Now, you still are a little shaky on your return game decisions, but you can work on that. Win special teams at home. I don't think this is going to be a one-score game, but in order for it to not be a one-score game, start with those three checklists.
All right, there you have it. We'll see what happens this weekend for Nebraska's last home game of the season.